All right, let's just jump right into this because it's a huge idea that kind of goes against everything we hear about the grind, right? What if I told you that showing up to the gym every single day, pushing yourself to the absolute limit, could actually be the one thing that's making you weaker? That more isn't always more, and sometimes it's the very thing that guarantees you'll fail. And this quote, this is really the heart of the whole story. It's a real gut punch, isn't it? I mean, just imagine putting in 90 days of nonstop, hardcore effort, only to find yourself in a worse spot than when you began. How on earth does that happen? Well, that is exactly what we're about to unpack. So, this all kicked off with a pretty simple but really ambitious goal. It was a 90-day experiment, designed to nail a super tough fitness challenge. But it turned into a cautionary tale, a perfect example of what happens when your best intentions run headfirst into a really bad strategy.
What's so wild here is just how fast it all went downhill. That first week, pure adrenaline. You feel unstoppable like a machine. But just look at this timeline. By the second month, the cracks are already starting to show. And by month 3, it's a total system meltdown. This wasn't some slow, gradual decline. It was like driving a car straight off a cliff.
So, what was the thinking here? The goal was to get a muscle up, which, is a seriously impressive display of strength. The method? A brutal, no days off kind of approach. It was based on this simple idea that more work must equal faster results. But as we're about to find out, the human body doesn't really work like a simple math problem.
So while the days were getting checked off on the calendar, the body was sending out some serious distress signals. This is what we call the redlining phase. When the engine is screaming, but the driver just keeps their foot on the gas. Let's look at the specific warning signs that got completely ignored.
And we're not just talking about being a little sore. This was a complete systemic breakdown. I mean, waking up at 3 a.m. for no reason, that's a classic sign of a nervous system that's just totally fried. Joints feeling like concrete, constant aches, that's just inflammation running wild. And not being able to recover between sets, that was basically his body waving a giant white flag just begging for a break.
Okay, this number is so important. 58 beats per minute. That was his healthy, resting heart rate before this whole experiment started. Think of it as a baseline, a sign of a well-rested, efficient cardiovascular system. Now hang on to that number. And this is the massive red flag, a jump of 10 full beats per minute. Now, 68 BPM might not sound crazy high, but for a resting heart rate, that's a huge increase. It's a clear biological signal that the body is under constant chronic stress. It's fighting to recover, but it's never, ever getting there.
And then, the crash. It wasn't a slow fizzle, it was a catastrophic failure. Can you imagine going from smoothly knocking out 12 pull-ups to barely being able to struggle through one ugly one? The muscles hadn't just gotten tired. It was like the connection between his brain and his body had just been completely severed. So why? Why did this happen? Well, it turns out there's a scientific model that explains this perfectly. It's called the J-curve, and it shows us exactly why that more is always better mindset is so dangerous. Let's dig into the science here.
So here's the core idea. Of course, some exercise is way better than no exercise. But there's a sweet spot, the peak of the curve. And if you push past that optimal point, your health benefits don't just flatten out. They actually start to go down as your health risks go up. You end up on that dangerous downward slope of the J.
And the data on this, it's absolutely stunning. Look at this. Light joggers see this massive 78% drop in their risk of mortality compared to people who are sedentary. But the marathon runners, the ones putting in the absolute most work, their risk is basically the same as someone who does no exercise at all. Just let that sink in for a second.
And it gets even more specific. This isn't just some abstract risk we're talking about. This is physical damage to the heart. Veteran endurance athletes show 8 times more heart scarring. We're talking actual damaged tissue than people who exercise moderately. The daily grind wasn't just making him weaker, it was putting his long-term health at risk.
Okay, so we've seen the problem, we've looked at the science behind it, so what's the solution? Now we get to talk about the comeback plan. This is the blueprint for training smarter, not just harder. It's all about realizing that growth happens during recovery, not just during the workout itself.
This whole protocol just flips that grind mentality completely on its head. First, frequency. Just 3 to 4 days a week. That gives you time for full recovery. Second, volume. Only 1 or 2 really hard sets per exercise, focusing on quality, not junk reps. Third, rest. taking a full 3 to 4 minutes between sets so that every single set is actually productive. And finally, consistency. You let your body actually learn and master a movement over several weeks. And this right here is the critical piece of the puzzle. Your nervous system, it might feel ready to go again after 20 minutes, right? Which tricks you into thinking you're recovered. But your physical tissues, the muscles, the tendons, the things that actually tear down and need to rebuild stronger, they are on a much, much longer timeline. Training every day just means you're always operating at 70%, never giving those tissues the time they desperately need.
So, what happens when you actually ditch the grind and embrace this smarter way of doing things? Let's go back to our story and see what happened when this blueprint was actually put into practice.
And here you can see the two paths, just laid out side by side. On one side, you've got the grind trap. It looks impressive on social media for sure, but it leads directly to burnout. And on the other, you have the recovery blueprint. It might seem less intense, but it's the only path that leads to actual sustainable progress.
After a full 2-week reset, this new approach didn't just bring back his old strength, it blew past it. Pull-ups went from basically 0 all the way back up to 15 reps. The constant joint pain? Gone. Sleep quality? Back to normal. This wasn't just about getting a skill back, it was about rebuilding his total health and performance from the ground up.
And that really brings us to the ultimate takeaway here. The temptation to rush, to grind, to always do more, it's powerful, I get it. But true long-term strength isn't built on burnout. It's built on a foundation of smart, consistent work that's paired with intelligent recovery. And that leaves us with one final question. It really forces us to look at our own motivations. Are we chasing the appearance of hard work? Just getting those check marks on the calendar? Or are we building a body that's going to be strong, capable, and healthy for years and years to come? The choice really is yours.